So we're moving on in the text. We're going to be in the last verse. So make contact with a qualified lineage holder and apply yourself to the methods that use the condition of a world steeped in negativity as causes of the altruistic state of wisdom. Okay? So make contact with a qualified spiritual mentor, then learn the methods, apply yourself to them, and specifically the thought training methods that use the condition of a world steeped in negativity as causes to attain supreme awakening. Okay, so that's really a transformative process, to use a world steeped in negativity as the causes for, transforming your mind and following the path. But he starts it with, make contact with a qualified lineage holder. Okay, so qualified lineage holder, those are very, very few, So somebody who's really received all the transmissions, the ordinations, the, initiations, who's done a lot of practice and, is really qualified after years of study and practice themselves to be able to, teach the Dharma to others. So, and also a lineage holder is usually recognized as somebody, there's very few people. They're like really the top people in the monasteries. They're not just kind of even ordinary geshis. They're the really top ones, okay? So considering that there's so few of them, we may have to modify it to, make contact with a qualified spiritual mentor, okay? And so this is quite an important topic, why do we need a spiritual mentor? Who's a qualified spiritual mentor? What do you do once you've made the contact? Do you just say, okay, I've made contact, now they're going to do something and make me enlightened? Yeah. It's kind of funny what we expect sometimes of spiritual mentors. We expect them to be mom and dad for us and give us all the love we've never had and, all these kinds of things. And when we're feeling bad, they're supposed to come to us and, encourage us and coddle us and everything like that. And it's not like that at all. Okay. So, first of all, in terms of the qualities of a spiritual mentor, there's different kinds of spiritual mentors, and they have different sets of qualities. You have your Vinaya spiritual mentor, who teaches you the Four Noble Truths, who gives you the refuge and the lay precepts, and teaches you the fundamental practices of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, 37 wings to awakening. Then you have your Bodhisattva spiritual mentor, who teaches you how to generate bodhicitta, teaches you all the far-reaching practices, and that's the person from whom you take the Bodhisattva vows. And then you have your Tantric guru, who gives you Tantric initiation and the commentaries and also the pith instructions. So those are three different kinds of teachers. It's best to kind of start out at the beginning, and start out with a Vinaya teacher or a fundamental teacher who introduces you to the path, so that you really develop the right understanding. Now, some of us may say, well, the fundamentals of the path really aren't so important, so I can, go to the more advanced things and I'll just pick up the fundamental easy stuff along the way. Well, the fundamental stuff is actually not so easy. Yeah, and it requires a lot of study in and of itself and a lot of practice in and of itself. Okay, and unless we have a very firm foundation, going further on the path doesn't make much sense. Okay, so with your Vinaya teacher, then you want somebody who's well educated And here, you know, Vinaya doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's going to ordain as a monastic. Usually the word Vinaya refers to the monastic code. But here, you know, it's just referring, maybe it's better to say a fundamental teacher, yeah, who teaches you the fundamentals of Buddhism. And that's very important, because if you don't learn the fundamentals correctly, if you learn the fundamentals just from Joe Blow, then everything you build after that is not going to be based on wisdom. And I've really seen this, you know, in myself and in others, that very often the first things you hear are the things that you remember. And if you hear it from somebody who gives you the wrong answer or the wrong instruction, it can be very difficult to get that out of your mind later on. Yeah, so it's really cool. You know, sometimes we say, oh, well, fundamental, it's not important, but actually it's really very, very important. Yeah, so really learning what the Four Noble Truths are and how they function, what the mind is, you know, how rebirth works, all these kinds of things, you know. Why do we practice ethical conduct? What is ethical conduct? What is refuge? Yeah, how do we develop concentration and wisdom, or at least begin to develop those things? So all of that you're going to learn from your fundamental teacher. So it's not kids stuff. Yeah. So you want to somebody who's well learned, and somebody who's quite compassionate, you know, and who can really guide us in a wise way. Yeah, and when we advance to the, you know, looking for the Mahayana guru, because many of us who enter into Tibetan Buddhism, we kind of, our fundamental guru, or our fundamental teacher, and then our Mahayana teacher become the same person. You know, we kind of enter in already learning about the Lamrim, and the Lamrim contains the fundamental practices as well as the Bodhisattva practices. Yeah, so there you really want somebody who has good ethical conduct, because you're going to become like the teacher you follow. So if the teacher isn't following very good ethical conduct, then you're not going to have the kind of role model you need for what you're going to become. So that's very, very important. You need somebody with some meditation experience so that they can guide you in that. Somebody with a correct understanding of emptiness so they can guide you on that. Somebody who has more knowledge than you do. It sounds obvious, but, you know. I would say, this isn't in the text, but somebody who has a good relationship with their own teacher, you know, and a good relationship with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, not somebody who, like, turns against His Holiness or turns against their own teacher, saying, well, I'm better than my teacher, or, you know, this kind of thing. You really need somebody who's quite skilled in giving the teachings, so that, you know, they can help you to understand according to your own disposition and tendencies. Somebody who's very compassionate, whose motivation is to really help their disciples, not somebody who's looking to have a big bunch of people following along behind them, singing their praises and giving them money and offerings. You want somebody who is very patient, because sometimes we don't act so well, and you know, somebody who will forgive us and not give up on us and not just say, you're too much, get out of here. Yeah, so really that kind of compassion and patience and stick-to-itness and good motivation, all these things are really important. And so they recommend that you get to know a teacher well before deciding in your mind that you're going to form a student-teacher relationship. Okay? And His Holiness really advises this. In the old days, that, you know, it was more if you heard even one verse of teachings from somebody, that person became one of your teachers. But nowadays, His Holiness really advises, especially in the West, people go to centers, you get to know a teacher, you check out the situation at the center and so on, and you see how things are and if it feels comfortable, and if, especially nowadays too, is the teacher teaching Buddhism properly? Are they teaching it according to the general Buddhist doctrine? Or are they adding in bits and pieces from other stuff or leaving out important points? Okay, so he really recommends checking things out and really seeing if you click with the teacher, you know, in the sense that you see, oh, this person has some qualities, some ability to guide me, and I trust them and I feel comfortable with them. Yeah. So the person who is your friend's teacher may not be your teacher, and that's perfectly all right, you know. And you may say, oh, somebody is a great master and they have a wonderful reputation, but somehow I just don't click with them, you know. So you just have to see what it is. When I say click with them, I don't mean, you know, because we read things, you know, from past disciples, you know, their hair stood on end and they had lights surrounding the teacher and they shivered up and down just hearing the teacher's name and seeing the teacher the first time. And so we kind of expect that to happen. Forget it. You know, it turns out much better if your feet are on the ground, you're not expecting some kind of remarkable pizzazz, and you just learn and you see and you investigate and don't rush into something, okay? And it's very important to notice that charisma is not one of the qualities of a good teacher. And this is quite important because many people are attractive to charismatic personalities, but that doesn't mean that that person is necessarily a good teacher, yeah? And so that's why it's so important to check their qualifications and to check their practice. Yeah? And I would say who you pick as your teachers is more important than who you marry, you know, if you're a lay person. And you know, usually if somebody meets somebody and marries them soon, everybody kind of rolls their eyeballs like, how is this going to turn out? Well, you know, so it's the same thing here, because I mean, who you marry, it's just this lifetime. But who you choose as a spiritual teacher, that's going to influence many, many lifetimes. Yeah, so good to think about it. You know, it doesn't mean this person needs to be perfect, because our definition of perfect me is somebody who does whatever I want them to do, whenever I want them to do it, and who is everybody who I want them to be. So that is impossible, especially because what we want and what we think changes day by day. So give up looking for perfection in somebody, you know. Instead, really see who you know, teaches a practice that you resonate with in a way that you resonate with, who is a good personal example for you, you know, who you feel you can trust. Yeah? And it may take some time to find that person, and that's perfectly all right. His Holiness says, you know, anyway, the Buddha is our teacher, so it's not like you have to become Buddhist and instantly find your teacher. You know, the Buddha's your teacher, so study the Dharma, yeah, and see what happens. To be continued.